I don't do a lot of vlogging, but given the release of a new true crime podcast, I thought now might be the perfect time to tell this story. Back in 2013, I was the co-director of the Bridgewater Triangle documentary, which was a marginally successful independent film. It went on to be picked up by Discovery Communications and aired on their Destination America network for a period of time, and it's now also available on Amazon Prime and YouTube. Because of my involvement in the Bridgewater Triangle documentary, through the years it led me to being involved in several other Bridgewater Triangle related projects. And in the spring of 2017, I was contacted by a production company out in Burbank, California called Bellum Entertainment. They were looking to produce a single episode for a show that they did about the paranormal and the unexplained, and they wanted to do a single episode which focused on the Bridgewater Triangle. And they were wondering if I was interested in being the director of photography on the episode. And like an idiot, without doing research into the company itself, I agreed to do the work. It was 2 full days of shooting and some additional drone photography, and the final bill was about $2,500. They paid me $500 up front to do the shooting, and I did the shooting in the spring of 2017. Over the next few months, I tried to collect the remaining $2,000 balance on the work that I had done and was never able to get anywhere with that. I was always told, checks in the mail, or we're working on that, you should have it within the next few weeks, and it just never happened. So by the end of the summer of 2017, I was concerned about this money, and that's when I started to do a little bit more research on Bellum Entertainment and found out that I was not the only one in this situation. They had dozens and dozens of in-house employees that hadn't received paychecks for weeks. And there were countless other vendors like myself who had done work for Bellum, and they had gone unpaid as well. And that's when I found out that the CEO of the company was a woman named Mary Carole McDonnell. And at the time, there were countless people chasing her down for money, and she was being very elusive, was never communicating with anybody directly, would always have her secretaries doing the communications. And then I found out around the same time that there was a private Facebook group for people that were owed money by Bellum. And it was a place where people would list their grievances, everybody would talk about their small claims cases that they had against Bellum and how everybody was winning these small claims cases, but nobody had been paid. And you can win a small claims case, but it's still getting paid that's the challenge. And through this private Facebook page is where more suspicious details began to emerge about Mary Carole McDonnell herself. There was talk that she was heir to some $80 million fortune and that everybody would be paid when she got access to the money, and it all started to sound very suspicious. And I could also see that nobody was getting anywhere with the courts in California. And I didn't get any, I won my small claims case against Bellum here in Massachusetts, but I was 3,000 miles away and I knew I was not going to get my money. By the fall of 2017, I was furious. There were countless other people that were furious. Everybody was in a rage about this company that owed all these people money. This CEO who had a $3 million mansion in La Cañada, a private yacht, drove a Porsche, somehow didn't have the money to pay her employees, even though she was in line for this $80 million fortune, supposedly. And it was around that time that CBS Los Angeles decided to do an expose on Bellum Entertainment and all of the employees and vendors that hadn't been paid.
Pat and Rick, it has not been a good month to be the owner of Bellum Entertainment. A group of her former employees are going public, saying she owes them thousands. And an arbitrator also ruled she owes an investor more than $3 million.
It specializes in true crime shows, but now a Burbank-based production company is accused of having problems of its own, bouncing checks and failing to pay its employees.
Every request for a check or where is the check was met with tomorrow, Friday, Monday, soon.
Mary Carole McDonnell and Bellum had begged CBS Los Angeles not to do the story, basically assuring CBS, we're going to get this resolved, these people are going to get paid. They had set a deadline that they said everybody would be paid by such and such a date at such and such a time. The deadline came and went, nobody had been paid, so CBS ran the story.
Bellum hasn't filed for bankruptcy, but they haven't told us where all the financing has gone. Just last year, Bellum raised $4.5 million, according to this SEC filing.
It became apparent very early on that this woman had no intention of paying anybody any of the money that she owed. So that's when I had to start thinking outside the box. I knew that she was concerned about her reputation because she had tried to get CBS not to run that story. So I decided to look to see if her name, Mary Carole McDonnell, was available as a website domain address. So I went to a domain broker, punched in the name Mary Carole McDonnell, found out that it was available. So for cheap dollars, I bought the domain. So I built a spec website, and the website featured all of the information out there about Mary Carole, including a link to the CBS expose. It also featured information about all the pending lawsuits against her, all the money that she owed. It provided a space for former employees to list their grievances. It even included pictures of her house, her Porsche, her yacht, and I even listed her personal home address on the website and encouraged people that were owed money to go knock on her door asking for the money. And don't forget, I was very angry at the time, so right at the top of the website was a picture of a pig with Mary Carole's face on the body of the pig. Once I had the spec website built, I sent an email over to Bellum basically saying, look, I have this spec website, here's a link, you guys can check it out. And I said, and I also bought the domain marycarolemcdonnell.com. And I said, if I don't have my money by Friday at 5 o'clock, and if you don't pay everybody else that's owed money on Friday by 5 o'clock, this website's going live. And that must have struck a nerve, because at 4:55 on that Friday, I received a $2,000 wire transfer to my bank from Bellum Entertainment. But of course, nobody else received their money. And that's when I decided at the time that even though I had my money, I was still gonna go live with the website because there were all these other people that were owed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So the website went live, and that struck a nerve with Mary Carole McDonnell. I think it was by Monday, I had received a letter from some guy claiming to be her attorney, a guy named Barry Rothman. Now this is where things get really funny. I didn't know it at the time, but Barry Rothman was a pretty well-known attorney in California who was famous for representing one of Michael Jackson's accusers back in the 90s, and there was some shady shenanigans that went on with Barry Rothman in regards to that case. And I got this letter from him basically threatening me to take the website down. Now I'm gonna read the letter verbatim. Okay, I'm gonna read this letter verbatim. Mr. Cadieux, this law firm represents Bellum Entertainment and Mary Carole McDonnell. We have reviewed your email to our client dated November 17, 2017. Copy to Karen and Gloria at Bellum. Those were the secretaries or the assistants that I had emailed. Your email constitutes actionable libel per se, as it has been published to 2 other people. Clearly, you are on a self-imposed vendetta to severely damage our client. Yeah, of course I was pissed off. All rights are reserved. Respecting the Mary Carole McDonnell website that you have constructed and that is currently effective, this additionally not only constitutes libel per se, but as well constitutes invasion of privacy, intrusion, false light, stalking, the unauthorized use of our client's name and likeness, damage to her business reputation, and as well subjects our client to great emotional distress for security reasons. You are herewith formally advised that if the website is not disabled by 12 midnight tonight Pacific time, we have been instructed without further notice to immediately file an emergency motion in Los Angeles Superior Court, compelling you to take down the website by court order. We will as well seek a restraining order against you, and we shall file a complaint in Los Angeles Superior Court for the aforesaid causes of action compelling you to defend yourself in California. You are owed no money from Bellum or Ms. McDonnell, making your conduct malicious, subjecting you to punitive dames. Your timely compliance shall be anticipated. All rights in the premises are reserved. This letter is not intended to be full enumeration of our client's rights. Barry K. Rothman. So when I got this letter, of course, I immediately shared it with everybody on the Facebook page because we had all been sharing everything with each other. And everybody said the same thing. This cannot be a real letter from a real licensed practicing attorney. I mean, it sounds like it was written by a 6-year-old. So the next step the following week was to find out, did this letter actually come from Barry Rothman? So I called his law office and somehow got through directly to him. And he said he wrote this letter, which just was astonishing. that a licensed practicing attorney who supposedly passed the bar could write such a shitty letter. The conversation with Rothman was very heated. He said I needed to think long and hard about how I go about getting my money from clients and that I can't just attack people like that. And I told him that he needed to think long and hard about who he decided to take on as clients because it was obvious that Mary Carole McDonnell was a scamming piece of shit. And at the time, I didn't know how much of a scamming piece of shit Rothman actually was. At that point, I didn't know the extent of the situation with Mary Carole McDonnell and Barry Rothman, so getting a letter from an attorney made me think twice about the website, and so I contacted my own legal counsel and was told, look, they don't have much of a case against you. Nothing that you put on this website is not true and you didn't do anything illegal. But if they choose to try to sue you in California, you'll have to lawyer up, and it's not worth it for the $2,000 that you went through all of this to get. And you did get paid. I was told the best course of action would be to disable the website. So I went back to the Facebook group and explained to them, look, I received my own legal counsel. I was told that the best course of action for me would be to disable this website because I had been paid. I mean, at that point, it was really obvious that there was no way that Bellum or Mary Carole McDonnell were going to pay the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that were owed to everybody else involved in this scandal. So I went ahead and I disabled the website. There were some people on the Facebook page that were a little upset with me, and I understand, and looking back now, knowing what I know now, I should have just left the thing up there. But what I did do was relinquish the domain back to the internet, meaning that it would become available again for sale and somebody else could buy it. Now, I didn't want to know who was going to buy it. I didn't want a paper trail from that person to me or anything like that. But I just told everybody, look, I will let you know when this domain is available again. And I can't remember how much time passed, but eventually it became available again. And I quickly went on the page and said, look, it's available again. Somebody buy it. If you want to carry this torch on and bring back the website, be my guest. And somebody did. Somebody bought the domain, and then up went a new website devoted to exposing Mary Carole McDonnell. Like I said, at the time that all this was going on, I did not know the extent of the Mary Carole McDonnell situation and did not know the extent to which she had ripped people off and how much money she actually owed. And I didn't really know the extent of it until recently when a new multi-episode true crime podcast premiered by a woman named Jamie Rice. The podcast is called Dirty Money Moves, Women in White-Collar Crime, and the entire first season of this podcast is devoted to the Mary Carole McDonnell story. It's mind-blowing. I don't want to give too much away because you should listen to the podcast, but in summary, nobody knows where Mary Carole McDonnell is now. Rumor is that she's hiding out in Dubai because there's no extradition from Dubai to the United States for criminal charges. But it turns out that she and Barry Rothman, right before she skipped town, pulled off a scam with the Bank of California and essentially ripped off the bank for a $15 million loan. Now, Mary Carole McDonnell had secured the loan under the lie that she was an heir to the McDonnell-Douglas family fortune. The McDonnell-Douglas family was involved in aviation and they sold out to Boeing years ago. She's from St. Louis, that family's from St. Louis. She was telling the Bank of California that she was related to these people and that she was in line to inherit some $80 million trust fund. It's all bullshit. And she used that lie to secure a $15 million loan from the Bank of California, and then she took off with the money. But the podcast goes into more of her history and more of her lies, and it is just an astonishing story, and I can't recommend more highly that you listen to it. So making the Bridgewater Triangle documentary led me to having direct dealings with this woman who is now the subject of this really popular new true crime podcast. And as far as Mary Carole McDonnell goes, the only thing I'll say is this, that Mary, if you're out there listening to this right now, just know that you are probably the worst person I've ever had to directly deal with in my life. You are a piece of shit of the highest order, and if you are hiding out in Dubai right now, I hope that your life over there is miserable. And I hope your life continues to be miserable until someday you're hopefully brought to justice. As for her sleazy attorney, Barry Rothman, the guy's dead. Right around the time that she skipped town, he had died, and initially it was viewed with some suspicion. Did Barry Rothman know too much? I mean, what's going on with him? But as it turns out, he had a bad reaction to anesthetic from a dental procedure, and the guy dropped dead. So there's one less scumbucket in the world. Anyway, thanks for listening to this story, and be sure to check out the podcast, Dirty Money Moves, Women in White Collar Crime, to learn more about the entire Mary Carole McDonnell story.